I'm going to be talking about the Guild and what it is, what you need to know about it as an IT professional. Because, just like any company, there's two perspectives. There's the perspective of like the people who are part of the company or the members. In this case, it'd be like a membership type thing. And then the other perspective, which we're going to talk about next week, is the business perspective. So why should like businesses out there care if you're like a member of the Guild or whatever the case is? That's going to be for next week. In this case, we're going to talk about like why even be a member, what is the Guild, what's our goal, and things like that. So click. All right, so an introduction real quick about the Guild. If you haven't heard about the Guild yet, we started collaboration years ago with a couple people, and it's a bit over a dozen people right now who are sort of collaborating, trying to build the initial parts of the Guild, and we're sort of opening it up right now to say, let's go public and let's start bringing in some members and talking to people seriously. So this is actually the first time I've publicly talked about the Guild in like a stream. I mean, I've chatted publicly about it in some places, but it's been a few years that we've been talking about it and putting it together, all the legal requirements, all the incorporation, stuff like that. So last year, we officially incorporated on March 29th, and the Guild is officially incorporated. I haven't told you what the Guild is yet necessarily, just these are just some back facts about what the Guild is. So we're new enough right now that we want and we need help developing some of the advanced systems. I just put a post out there to the designers of Techlahoma anyway, to say, if anyone's available to jump in and do some iconography and things like that, because our website has all of the information on there. It's got a lot of data, it's got contracts, it's got all of the legal stuff that's going on, all of our goals, all of our plans for the future. But it's not the most beautiful website in the world. It's an amazing website that is highly functional. It's well designed as far as the software engineering goes, but some iconography and stuff like that could be added to it. And I have all kinds of ideas for some really cool things for that. So if you are wanting to join the Guild as a member for design and then like collaborate and volunteer, or even be a company who's going to help out and we could pay you some amount of money for some iconography and stuff like that, that's really helpful. So think of the Guild as an IT trade organization. So it's like the Bar Association for lawyers. It's something where people can go and they can collaborate and they can come up with the principles of our industry, the way that our industry should work going forward, and I'm going to elaborate on that here in a little bit. But before I elaborate too much on all that deep stuff, I'm going to define what is information technology, because a lot of people, whenever they hear, oh, I'm in IT, they think, oh, cool, so you pick up these big heavy servers and stick them inside of a rack and wire them up. You're in IT. Or they think of something related to hardware. But as far as the Guild's perspective on what information technology is, apart from somebody saying, I am an IT, if you work in the information technology sector, then that's really just the use of electronic technology for moving around information. So that sounds like it's a lot related to the hardware and even the software, like writing the software that moves around information, and the hardware, of course, the networking and stuff like that. But it also includes the people and the processes that are related to that. So not just software and hardware, but the people who create the software and the quality engineering team that tests the software, and the product owners and the people who are directly related to creating the stories and doing the management of the software and all that sort of stuff. So information technology is the things that are directly related and slightly adjacent to the creation of these systems that move around information. And feel free, of course, to throw in questions. I'm keeping an eye on the chat here. Questions or comments or more Happy New Year's or whatever, of course, that you guys want to do. So some examples are software and databases. So the people who write the software, the DBAs who create the databases and do all the backups and that sort of stuff, those are the things that directly work with the electrical movement of information, the software and the databases. The hardware, of course, the servers, the switches, the routers, all that sort of stuff, all the media that connects to it. That's all the physical infrastructure. So, of course, that's part of information technology. I think that's what people usually think about when they hear IT, is that type of thing. But lastly, like the analysts, the product owners, the people who are part of the SDLC, who are testing the software or testing doing the internal vulnerability assessments or the external vulnerability assessments, as long as it's related to the flow of information and protecting that information and all that sort of stuff about information. So that's information technology. These are some lookalikes. These are things that I would say are not information technology, but they're pretty close. So a coder is somebody who puts codes into a computer. You can think about this like Excel. Like if someone goes into Excel and they're putting in data into a spreadsheet, that does not mean that you're in information technology. You could be. I mean, you could be an IT putting some stuff inside of a spreadsheet in order to track some of the things. Of course, you're in information technology, but that's for other reasons. If it's just someone who maybe they're running their own shop out of their house and they're using Excel for their accounting, they put stuff in there. They're adding codes to a system. That system was created and compiled by a software engineer, but they're just using the system. They're just putting codes into a system. It might be similar for somebody who does purely HTML, that you're putting codes into a system, and maybe you're not necessarily considered a software engineer if you're doing codes, but at the same time you are delivering a website, and the website is going to have information, and that goes over a network. So there's a lot of that gray area of an IT lookalike. Then the electronics technician or component level electronics technician, if you're building circuit boards, you could be in IT. You could be making circuit boards for a motherboard that's for a computer or a server. That you could go into a server and you could see a popped capacitor and go and solder in a new unpopped capacitor. So you're in IT. But if you're making circuit boards like for watches or for not cell phones, smoke detectors and other cool things like that, you're not in the IT industry, but you are doing electronics. So it's another thing that's like there's some gray area and there's a lookalike. And then people managers. So if you are a people manager, then you may be adjacent to IT. So if you manage purely IT people, then you're IT adjacent. You work in the IT industry. You're not directly hands-on. Now, a lot of IT people, managers, CTOs, things like that, they do put their hands on. So for these other reasons, they are directly in the IT industry. But otherwise, they're IT adjacent if they're hands-off management, stuff like that. But then again, if you are a recruiter, let's say, and you recruit purely for the IT industry, sure, you're in an IT adjacent role. But if you're just a general recruiter or you recruit for other things outside of the IT industry, then you're not in the IT role. So these are another gray area where it sort of depends. And these are sort of look-alike type things. So that's sort of the definition of IT. And I've got a little list here of the Guild's current list of IT disciplines. Software engineering, obviously, IT architecture, obviously. And there's some other things on here also, like media design. I'll go ahead and put my mouse over media design. If you're creating media for like billboards down the side of the freeway, you're not necessarily in IT. But if you're creating media that's for an advertisement that is, goes on, I don't know, some website, Microsoft.com or something like that, or some sort of media design for websites, then you are in IT. So another one of those things where there could be gray areas in some of these, but if they're directly related to information technology, web development, application development, even low-level development on the circuit board, like drivers and things like that, then you are considered part of IT. So this is just sort of like, what is IT, so that we know who would be interested in even thinking about joining the Guild or staying on this call, this stream, in order to see what the Guild is. And these types of people will be the types of people who should definitely be interested in what the Guild does, what our goals are, and things like that. So what is it? What is the Guild to IT professionals? So to start, we're a forum. So a forum where you can go onto Slack or Discord and you can chat with people who are the same as you. You know, I'm a high-level software engineer or a quality engineer or a media designer, and I need to know what the latest trends are, or I need to know what the latest ideas are on principles, best practices, and I'm keeping myself sharp by talking to people who are at the same level as me, or higher, same level or higher than me, or even lower, get fresh ideas, and talk to people who have more or less experience, and have this forum where we collaborate and we discuss this type of thing. So that's number one what we are. We're a forum for discussing that sort of thing. True apprenticeships. So the Guild has an idea of apprenticeship as being sort of like the beginning way of joining the ranks of the IT industry. And the apprenticeship means that it does not mean that you're joining as an intern to a job, but it does mean that you are learning the profession and that you have a direct connection with a mentor, a person who has mastered the craft and who has said, I'm going to take my time to help you. I'm going to review all the work that you do. We're going to have these in-depth conversations. And so you are officially my apprentice. You're somebody who I'm going to work with and grow your skill level. And the value that you may get out of that as the person who's the master is going to be taking an apprentice and teaching them, and maybe also giving them an internship. So they're not mutually exclusive. You could also be an intern with the same people or company who are your mentors. So there's the dichotomy a little bit. But an apprentice is somebody who is learning from someone who's an expert, somebody who's a master of their craft. So an apprentice, that we think of apprenticeship as something that is purely apprenticeship. And also, of course, you could also become an intern and be paid, or even just a junior in the craft, a junior developer, or a novice developer. So you could also be being paid, but an apprenticeship is sort of that direct relationship between you and some expert in the craft. So the guild has all that sort of thing. Okay, so what is the Guild IT Professionals? It's a place. I'm gonna recap on a forum, a place to collaborate. So collaboration, frequently contracting, sometimes W2. It brings us together to look for other professionals to work with. So if we're collaborating and we're talking about our ideals and our principles and the things that we think are high level, and we build these relationships with other people who are similar to us. I'm a software architect myself, software engineer. And so I'm in here talking with other software engineers and also quality engineers and also media designers. And I see these expert quality engineers and I say, you know what, one of these projects I'm working on, we need another quality engineer. I know that you are well vetted. You've been in the guild. The guild has done an interview and they've vetted you and you are obviously a professional and I've seen that you're active inside the guild. Hey, do you mind coming on with me to this project? And let's talk about working together to finish this project, or coming on with me to this client. This client of mine needs another QA person, or a media designer, or a product owner, or something like that. So it's a place to collaborate, not just for ideas, but also to come together and find ways that we can work together, actually do paid work together, and things like that. And along with that comes mediation. So the guild has processes and policies in place. It's part of our agreements. We have NDA portions and non-solicitation clauses inside of our agreements in order to join the guild, so that we can collaborate openly and not worry about someone stealing our employees or our clients. My company, Gen Studios, we have a number of people, and if I said, hey, come on to work with our client, and they saw one of the consultants I work with, it wouldn't be good of them to try to steal one of my consultants over. But then again, we're all consultants. So if I want to change and move over from one company to another, I'm not bound by any sort of employment agreement. So there's a lot of flexibility, but there's also a lot of processes and policies we have for mediation. And there's so much in depth we can get into in this sort of stuff. But the whole goal of mediation is to leave open the door for open collaboration. So everyone can be comfortable not only talking about ideas, but working together and not having to worry about any of that sort of stuff. So as you can tell, the guild has some complexity to it. We have a lot of these discussions and these documentation processes we've already worked out, but there's some benefits of membership. So of course, being part of the community, take part of those discussions in whatever disciplines that you're in. That's of course a benefit of being a member. But businesses, colleagues, and fellow members automatically trust your skill. So you can trust that the skill level of the people in the guild are a high skill level, and not only skill level, but also communication and trustworthiness. Because part of the vetting process of becoming a guild member is, we talk to you, we perform a full-on interview as if you were going to a company, and there's a bonus to that, which I'll get into the end, because a lot of people hear, oh, we got to interview, but I'll just say right now, the goal is to get rid of interviews for the future. So if you want to go to a company and they say, oh, you're a guild member, you've already been vetted and interviewed, we don't even need to interview you, which has happened to me. And so it's not outside of the realm of possibility. But since you and every other person has that value that you have been vetted, you have been an active member, they can see you in the channels communicating, and they know who you are, and they know that you've been vetted, they can trust that you have a good skill level, and you can trust that they have a skill level. And this is a sort of one of the key central goals or important points of the guild, is that we have that, and that builds a serious amount of trust in what the guild is and what we do. Which I'll get into more of what we do here in a couple seconds. So work facilitation, that's one of the things I talk about, where we can talk about, actually this isn't working together. This is so that clients or prospective clients can come into the guild and say, I'm looking for somebody who is a software engineer, or whatever the case is, a quality assurance, or whatever the case is. And they know, because you're a guild member, that you that you are valuable. You know, they can skip the interview essentially, other than making sure that you fit for like their particular technologies, because the guild doesn't get too low level into like what technologies you're professional in, sort of like the high level interview stuff. But the clients can come in there and they can say, I'm looking for a QA person. They post to a QA channel or a software engineering channel or the IT architecture channel, and they know that whoever happens to reply has a high level of skill, and they can sort of skip all that. Oh, is this person a good communicator? Is this person trustworthy? Is this person even have any skills at all? And they can only focus on the low level actual implementation stuff they need. You know, how is your work with Cisco routers, for example, if you're in IT architecture, or how much experience do you have working in PHP or C# or something like that? And they can focus on that low level stuff and not worry about, are you a good communicator? Do you have high skill level in the general software engineering that they're looking for? And then membership healthcare. So healthcare through Blue Cross. The goal of this is to decouple you from your employer. So especially if you're already a consultant, but also if you're still doing W-2, as a guild member, you get healthcare through the guild, through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that decouples you from your employer. So if you happen to move from one employer to another employer, then you'll have that ability to not worry about, oh, I'm going to lose my healthcare for a little while or whatever the case is. So that's another big benefit of membership. Optional management of certifications. So there's this thing with consulting, and I know not everyone here is a consultant. There's a lot of W-2, but there's this thing about when you move positions that, you know, I need a certification for I don't know, whatever certification. There's so many certifications, I don't even want to start to list them. A+ certification or whatever the case is. Now, if you have to retake certification courses, maybe for in the healthcare industry or whatever the case is, for every single position you move to or every client you take on, that gets really annoying. But if you keep those certifications listed under the guild, or even a background check, which is optional, but if you do your background check through the guild, then every new client you go to that needs a background check, you say, no, I'm a consultant. You don't do a background check for me. You either just trust me, or here's a background check that I had done through the guild. I'll just have the guild pass it on to you, or whatever the case is. Here's some certifications that I did for the guild. HIPAA certification, for example. I'm not going to do it for every client I go to, but I did it a year ago, and it's a 2-year certification. Here it is. This is one that I did, and it's listed with the guild. So you don't have to manage all your certifications and background checks and drug tests and all that sort of stuff for every single client you go to. It's managed through the guild. So that's another benefit of membership. Help with converting or mastering the practice of consulting. So like I said, some of you are W-2, right? And you're wondering about getting into consulting or contracting. Now what do you need to do that? There's all kinds of tax stuff. There's stuff that you don't understand. But a lot of members of the guild already do that. So if you jump into the guild, you become a member, and we have different organizations we work with, our tax accountants that we trust, the people who do our retirement, and everything that we work with, our business managers, and we can either share them with you or give you tips on what to look for. So, of course, becoming part of a community that has consultants and contractors in it would be very helpful to you if you were wanting to move from W-2 to consulting. So that's another thing, connection with organizations that other members use. So you have tax accountants and stuff like that. Apprenticeships, so taking and giving. Joining the guild is a great way to, you join the guild, you're already at a high level, you've mastered your craft, and you're looking at taking on an apprentice. So you join the guild and then you take on an apprentice. Or the opposite, you're new and you're wondering about the industry, you put a lot of time and effort in it, maybe you're in your third year of college or whatever the case is, you're going for a bachelor's or you're going for your master's or whatever the case is, and you want to become an apprentice so that you can get some sort of on-the-job type of training. I'm sort of mixing up internship right now, but you become an apprentice. So we have that framework there for the guild. Businesses want to bring on guild members, and they give heavy priority. So I've already seen this where businesses find people who are my colleagues, and they say, oh, well, if you're a colleague of the guild, then definitely. I mean, we don't even have to ask a question. If it's someone who has been vetted, then yeah, we're just going to bring them on. That's definitely a thing. A private but shareable profile that celebrate your discipline and stuff like that. So think of this like LinkedIn, but more attached to projects and less attached to like work history or companies you've worked for. It also shows like what your rank is, whether or not you have a background check or certifications on file and stuff like that. So this private but shareable profile. Other benefits, the ability to perform talks, meetups. So if you're a member of the guild and you perform speaking engagements that we need, let's say we say, hey, we need somebody to do some talks for us, sometime later this year, and you're a guild member, then of course you get priority. You get priority over somebody who's not a guild member. And also on your guild talks, you can say, I'm an expert or whatever the case is, or I'm an apprentice, and you could put that sort of thing on your guild talk, and people say, oh, that person's from the guild. Now that's a hope of the future. Obviously, we only have a bit over a dozen people who are currently in the guild, and we're just now opening the doors. So we're hoping, in order for any of this stuff to work that I'm talking about, that we get members. We need people to talk to us and say, I will volunteer, I will become a member, I will help you with the site, I will do talks. So a lot of this is reliant on you guys, because like I said, this is like a nonprofit. I think I said that. This is a lot like a nonprofit. The guild is going to be heavily requiring people volunteering in order to make all of this work. It already works at a small scale. We want to make it work at a bigger scale. So the ability to collaborate with other guild members on official publications. So whenever the guild puts out a publication, and we call it an official publication, that's going to be something that says something very important that we're not setting in stone, but setting in clay, we'll say, or setting it close to in stone. When you write software, you must test your software, and then elaboration on that, and places when that does not apply, but most of the time it does apply, and this is why. If we write an official publication and it comes from the guild, that's going to be an official thing, and we're going to need people to collaborate and publish those publications. And then you can become a committee member, of course. So if you join the guild, you become a committee member for a certain discipline. Let's say the IT architecture or the quality assurance or the UI UX, the user experience discipline. Then you help define what that discipline is for the world. You help say, this is what the guild says the UX discipline is. And these are the types of people, and this is the process for joining the guild and as a UX discipline, and showing these are the things you have to do in order to show that you are an expert and all that sort of stuff. So becoming a committee member of a certain discipline it's a benefit, I believe, and also a little bit of a responsibility. So yeah, lots and lots of benefits to joining the guild, and that may be a little bit overwhelming on all the stuff that you sort of get for joining the guild, all the collaboration, healthcare, the joining into the talks, and all the stuff that I just talked about. But now I'm going to talk about why the guild exists and what our goals are. And these goals these would become your goals. If you became a member, these become the goals of you as a member. Even if you're not 100% active, if you just every once in a while check in, you're a little bit active, these become sort of your goals, at least to some degree. So goal number 1, be a great place for collaboration. We already discussed all that in all this previous stuff. But goal number 2, help professionals decouple from the confines of the job. So right now, a lot of discussions that we have, which is great, take place on the job. Your healthcare is on the job. All of your colleagues are on the job. A lot of us obviously already break free from the confines of the job when we go to Stack Overflow and we post things there, Stack Exchange, and we look at all these peer-reviewed articles and questions and answers, and so we sort of break free from the job a little bit. And the guild supports Stack Exchange in places like that, peer-reviewed type places. But the goal of the guild is to completely decouple people from the job, so that the job becomes something where you can focus on the direct implementation of the job. But as far as the industry at large, you can sort of extract that and make your discussions part of the industry at large, instead of keeping those conversations inside of sort of a small workforce. Even if you're working in a place that has 1,000 employees, 1,000 employees is less than 1 million employees. So less than 1 million people on the workforce. So of course we want to decouple you from that small job and get you into conversations that are sort of at a larger scale. Provide the communities with our disciplines. So we want to become the single source of truth for principles and practices. And part of that is, if I'm at a position and I'm, a mid-level software engineer and I'm trying to explain to my manager, we can't push this yet because we haven't done testing, or whatever the principle is. We need to take some time to change this application so that QA can do some automated regression tests. And we want to talk to them about these principles. We sort of have to come up with that ourselves, and we need to build, we need to learn how to communicate that sort of stuff. But if we have links that say, look, this place called the Guild, which you've never heard of, but in the future people will have heard of, this place called the Guild has documented the importance of regression testing, the importance of CI/CD, the importance of testing, the importance of dependency inversion, all that sort of stuff, these principles. And it helps you to point toward official documentation instead of 15 different books that each have 10,000 pages, and you need to sort of find these little obscure places. And we don't want that anymore. We want to have some peer-reviewed documentation, and by peer-reviewed I mean every person in the guild gets to have a look, gets to have a say, and we write this documentation, and that helps us to communicate to our management, the management of the companies, clients, employers that we're working for. These are the reasons why we need to follow these practices, and it helps us articulate it, and that's a very, very important vision and goal of the guild. Support other knowledge-based organizations. So apart from us doing that, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to completely reinvent the wheel. We know Stack Exchange exists. We know that other places, Wikipedia, for example, exists. These places that already have great documentation, and we support them by, of course, linking to them and contributing to them. Places like Wikipedia can take donations. Places like Stack Exchange, you can donate your time, and you can answer questions, and we support that. If you're a member of the guild, you're the type of person who says, I support the sharing of knowledge through knowledge bases, peer-reviewed specifically. Certain websites like medium.com that aren't really peer-reviewed, they are not trustworthy enough for the guild to say that we support them. But Stack Exchange and other peer-reviewed places, yes, we definitely support them. So that's a huge goal of us, is supporting the existing industry, and of course trying to get them to collaborate with us as much as possible. So demand the trust of professionals. Is the guild for? The guild is not only for Oklahoma residents. The guild is incorporated in Oklahoma. The guild is working with Oklahoma mainly right now. There's a couple other people in the guild, a very small percentage, who are from outside of Oklahoma because they were, they applied to positions, or they heard about the guild or got here from some other state or whatever the case is. So the guild is not for Oklahoma only, but it is founded in Oklahoma, stationed in Oklahoma, and this is definitely the seed state of the guild. Demand the trust of professionals and businesses. This is, I think, the hardest and most important thing about the guild, is demanding the trust of professionals and businesses, mainly the businesses. How do you demand of a business that you go into an interview, let's say, or not even go into an interview, but yeah, you would still go into an interview possibly, and say, hey, my name is Stephen Fletcher. I am a member of the guild. I'm an expert software engineer. And demand that they say, oh, shoot, okay, you're an expert software engineer in the guild. Why even have this interview other than talking about the low-level implementation details? Because if I went to an interview, honestly, and they said, we need somebody who's an expert in, like, say, Python, I would say, sorry, I'm an expert software engineer and I know Python, but if you need somebody to completely architect you in something in Python, it would take me time to figure it out, and that wouldn't be a good thing. I'd rather go to somewhere where they do C++ or C# or something like that, or even TypeScript or something. So anyway, you would still have low-level interview. But if I go into an interview and the business knows that I'm a guild member, as with like my current client, for example, I went to an interview, they said, oh, we've seen you, we know who you are, we've seen some of your talks and some of your publications. We don't even have to do this interview. Let's just make sure, do you do microservices? Yes. Do you follow solid principles? Yes, it depends on how you look at that with object-oriented development. I have these like low-level conversations. Do you know C#? Do you know Python enough to be able to code review it? And so I did those low-level things, and they're like, we already know you're a great communicator. We know that you're a member of the community. And so, yeah, you've got the job. So that's essentially how that interview worked, and that's what I want to have everyone get. We want everybody to be in that position where we get rid of the interview. Businesses just trust you because of how you're associated and how you've already been vetted. So huge benefit. One of the biggest goals and visions of the guild, apart from collaboration with each other, is forcing businesses to trust us. Which becomes self-evident. We don't go in there and say, you must trust us. It becomes self-evident because of our processes and because of our vetting and because of the quality of people that we are and the way that we collaborate in our community. It becomes self-evidence. That's how we demand that they trust us. Be an active member. So that's all the goals and everything. In order to be an active member, first of all, be vetted and verified. It's not that big of a deal. It's a regular old interview. We talk to you. We find out what your skills are, and the time and your skills. We also talk to some of your current or past clients. Ask them, how your communication is, what level of contribution you give to them, and stuff like that. And then we decide together, you decide along with the people who are vetting you, is this person going to come on as an apprentice, which is of course going to be fairly common. You're going to get some apprentices in here who only have a year of experience and they want to join the guild. They want to get the value of working with the guild. Are you going to come on as a professional, as an expert, or a guild master? Coming on as a guild master is the same as coming on as an expert, except as a master, you mean that you're someone who takes on apprentices or who provides documentation and publications and does talks and stuff like that. That's really the only difference between an expert and a master, is that a guild master, does publications and does talks and conferences and stuff like that. Where an expert could, but an expert isn't interested in doing publications necessarily. They may collaborate on some, but they don't really focus on doing talks and stuff like that. So we'll have those conversations. We'll get you vetted and verified. And then dues. In the future, we plan to have basic dues just like the bar association. So to join the bar association as a lawyer, you have yearly dues, which is a couple dollars a year or something like that. Of course, a member's skills are far more valuable than any dues. So any member joining now, early joining or joining and contributing and volunteering and being part of the collaboration of the guild and stuff like that, there's no dues necessary. We don't want a couple paltry dollars in order that would just add some overhead and some headache. Instead, we'd rather have members come on and collaborate and volunteer to help out and sort of have these chats. That's far more valuable than a couple dollars a year. So that's where we exist right now. So on the website, we do talk about dues. They're more planned for the future, and when we get a lot more massive, up to thousands of members or whatever the case is. Sign the agreement. So be vetted, sign the agreement. It's on our website on the resources tab. It's got all the information in there. It has the NDA stuff in there. It has the non-solicitation stuff in there, and all of the information that you need to know in order to sign the agreement and become a guild member. Be active. In order to be an active member, of course, you have to be active. Join the meetings and discussions. Vote. So whenever someone says, "Hey, what do you think about the idea of this principle, or doing this for the guild, or having this talk in the future?" Give it a thumbs up if you agree. If you like the idea, give it a thumbs up. That's like a vote. Don't give things a down vote, a thumbs down, or whatever the case is, unless you also, go in a thread or talk to people and give a reasoning like, "I think instead we should try this." Somebody just saying "I disagree" doesn't have much value. Somebody saying "I disagree and here's why," of course, has a lot of value. And that's the guild. So there's a lot of membership benefits. There's a lot of goals for the IT industry at large, and lots and lots of plans for the future. And I hope that everyone here is definitely interested in chatting about it.